Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show where we discuss all things political, bringing you top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I am Tundu Abiola, and This Day Live begins now. Welcome back to This Day Live. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Chike C. Ogia, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Professor Anthony Killer, CIAP Center Director, and Professor Bola Akinteriwa, DG Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Welcome to the program, sirs.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So let's start in Nigeria, where President Muhammadu Buhari this week suspended Justice Walter Onnoghen as Chief Justice of Nigeria. According to the president, the suspension followed an ex parte order from the Code of Conduct Tribunal over Justice Onnoghen's current trial for false declaration of assets. President Muhammadu Buhari quickly moved to replace Justice Onnoghen with Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed in acting capacity, who is the next most senior justice in line of succession, pending the determination of the case brought against Justice Onnoghen. This has drawn reactions from different quarters, including the Nigerian Bar Association, which called on the Nigerian Senate and the National Judicial Council to intervene to prevent what it calls a flagrant abuse of the judicial process. Britain, United States, and the EU have all expressed fears that the situation may affect the credibility of the forthcoming general election in Nigeria. Meanwhile, the newly appointed acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, has inaugurated 250 chairmen and members of the Election Petition Tribunal for the presidential and National Assembly elections coming up on February 16th. Now, this was quite the bombshell and dominating headlines. I'd like your take. I'll start with you, Chike.
Well, this is a continuing transaction of the illegality we talked about from 2 weeks ago. Remember, there was a phrase I used then, I was particularly sad being a lawyer, that it was a sad time for the judiciary, because I looked at it at the beginning of the whole transaction, and I talked about indecent haste. I said, how could you, if our system had been that, functional, I'm sure this country wouldn't be in the situation we are in today, where you file papers on a Thursday, you go to court on Friday, you get injunction on Monday, you're ready to move, So the whole thing from ab initio, if you ask me, has just been one long, drawn transaction of illegality. And of course, it has culminated with this suspension. But you see, we have to be clear about something. And that is, as a lawyer, I know there are always two sides to every coin. But the fact is that once you have started on the wrong premise, no matter what your interests are, no matter what genuine case you have, legally you have been blown off. So yes, there's the issue of whether he's a public official or whether it's or whether it's a dishonorable act or what kind of conduct it was or whether it was in his function as a judicial officer. I want to leave all that to the conjecture of law. That's neither here nor there. The courts are there to answer those questions. But how do you get to the situation where that Chief Justice of Nigeria is suspended today, and with that kind of haste, you have gone ahead to swear in an acting chief judge? Of course, I heard it was just one judge that was there with him. You see, the profession, don't forget, is a very conservative profession. You don't expect them, especially the honorable members of the Supreme Court, to start carrying banners and being all activist and all that. But that simple act that most of those other judges did not come forward.
No judge attended the swearing-in. Only one judge attended the election of the
petition. Yes,
the election.
No judge need to attend the swearing-in, so I don't really mind about that. But it's a swearing-in because you see that is the crux of the matter. That is where this whole illegality. Yes, that's where this whole illegality is going on to. Because I heard Onnoghen insisted that the right thing be done. Let's appoint the right judges to this tribunal so that justice is guaranteed at the end of the day. But this government is going straight ahead to appoint those judges that they want to use because they have worked to the answer of this election.
Professor
And I think it is a pathetic situation in Nigeria. I'm very upset about what is going on.
Clearly so, and I share your sentiments. But, Prof, the president addressed the country and itemized the rationale behind his move. Are you convinced or persuaded in any way by his statement?
I like your question because you are talking about rationale. My own counter question is whose rationale? Whose rationale? That's the rationale given by Muhammadu Buhari. You see, I am not a lawyer, but I know that there is the principle of indivisibility of law. The principle has it, and people have explained it within the framework of the principle of estoppel, according to which, if you advance an argument, a reason, a rationale, and it is reckoned with in lawmaking, in jurisprudential consideration, you cannot come back and deny, disown that same argument that have been used positively for you.
That's right.
Now, how is that one relevant to the rationale of President Muhammadu Buhari? What is my take on that? I think that our president has a major problem. A major problem. And when I read what was published in ThisDay of today, one article, referring to what Ernest Ben, who lived from 1875 to 1954, who tried to define politics. He said politics is finding trouble, whether that trouble exists or not, but you must find that trouble. So what our own president, Muhammadu Buhari, is trying to do is just looking for trouble where it does not exist and trying to create one. You see, the rationale, if we look at it critically, and I agree with Shike in his total submission, you have a situation whereby the CCT itself, we have been told by the learned people that it falls within the framework of the executive arm of government. All right?
Investigative agency.
Now, precisely. Now you now have a president who is now seen as the accuser, as the prosecutor, as the judge.
The enforcer.
Is also the policeman, is the court whip, is the one doing everything. Whereas we have been told too, we have been educated that there is separation of powers. You cannot be the God Almighty in this particular case. So if you are now asking me what is my view about this, please, there are no good, valid, acceptable rationale for anything. The issue at stake has always been the question of due process. Yeah. Nobody is even evaluating whether or not Onnoghen was guilty, is guilty, and will be guilty. We are not talking about that yet. But the issue is that our laws, the Constitution says, whenever we have a situation whereby a judicial officer, all right, is involved in this type of situation, please let us have a pronouncement, an investigation by the NJC. That's the regulation. But now our president, in a manu military fashion, now going back to the time he was head of state, when he can make use of decrees, Decree 4, all right, you will accuse, you will arrest, you will imprison, and nobody can ask questions. No, that time is gone. He's now president of Nigeria, not head of state. He's now president, elected, meaning that as an elected leader, there is a pattern of governance he has to follow. And this is the issue. And we need to agree with the international community, although I'm always very suspicious of any foreign intervention in our domestic affairs. But when you now have a situation whereby the leader does not want to comply with the regulations, with the law, and we don't know the extent of which the principle of international responsibility to protect, all right, will come in, because that one talks about genocidal crimes and all those. We are not yet in the case of genocide. But what we are facing now is that the president is imposing himself, not the party. He's imposing his own view of the world. No, that cannot be acceptable in a more civilized society like Nigeria.
Absolutely not. So what are the options now before the National Assembly, before the Nigerian public, before the opposition parties in the run-up to the elections?
Well, very quickly, I think there are sort of three options. The Senate has taken one option. The Senate is planning to reconvene on Tuesday, and what they can do is to, as a top body, you know, as part of the powers of the state, to come together and sanction the move, and they can stand against it. I think the judicial arm of government is going to court to seek injunction against this, protest against it.
There's even a subsisting one.
Yes, but they can challenge. No,
There's one.
Mention Monday.
Yes.
yeah, it's part of what they're going to use to say that this nomination is illegal. I think those are the judicial process. Those are the legal processes. The political one by the Senate and the legal arm of government. But there's also a legal political one. I think the NBA can rise up, and if I was president of NBA, I would go on strike. You know, I would paralyze the whole legal system as a protest to this. You see, but that said, there's something that needs to be said in this kind of situation. If we take the case of the CJN and look at it as a prism of where we are as a country, what it tells us about us is that it's a very difficult time to be a rational, thinking, independent Nigerian, because too many things are wrong. And they're not complex things. They're unforced errors that we cause for ourselves. For the way the whole thing has gone, it's even putting people like Professor Akinterewa in a very embarrassing situation. And I explained why, and I'm enjoying his bad situation, because he is a big advocate of global power do not intervene in Nigeria. Now, these people are forcing him to recant 40 years of academic stance because he found himself in a situation today where the foreign powers are right and we're blatantly wrong. I saw him stammering there because that's a huge thing. That's the problem they create for us in Nigeria. You see, the other problem is you find yourself in a situation where you cannot just say yes or no and walk away. Because if not for the gravity of what is going on, this will be tagged a comedy of errors. But this is not a comedy. This is a tragic comedy we're facing. So you can't really laugh it off. A very simple thing, too much on false errors. If you suspect that the CJN is corrupt, culpable of anything, the process with which to deal with it is very clear. If you don't trust the process, you denounce the process and you take it to plot review. It's a very simple thing.
Exactly. How is this not obvious?
Now, it's not obvious because either people are mischievous or totally incompetent. In my life, I distrust incompetence more than mischievous people. And to the other point, which was said, that we're in a situation now where I disagree with Prof on this. This is not a Buhari issue anymore. This is not a one man. We need to start talking about presidency and administration, because we need to ask ourselves, today in this time in history, are we saying those people, all the ministers, all the senior advisors, all the party members in this government, in this APC, do they agree in their mind? If there's nobody that has the lucidity of mind and the courage of God to say, no, hang on a second.
The president's wife has said it.
It doesn't matter. Look, you see, what I'm saying is this.
Men are in charge, and all Nigerian men were all eunuchs.
Whatever the reason is.
Whatever
the reason. But I think we're at a time in history where we need to start shifting the narrative beyond one man. Because tomorrow, whatever happens, all those who are quiet today are guilty of letting this happen.
So they're accomplices. But as Chike just said, yes. Mrs. Buhari did throw down the gauntlet, and nobody has taken it up. There have been no mass resignations in the face of this gross violation.
You don't even need to resign. Nigeria is a very dangerous thing to resign in Nigeria.
No, it's not.
Just protest. You just need to, just to say, this is where it stands from. But there's one thing.
You talked about the bar,
which I am a proud member of,
yes,
and which should really be the movement for this activism.
But if you look at
coming to get the back
yeah,
up.
if you look at what is going on, you can see the greater picture.
Yes.
This did not start now.
No, it
Don't forget that the president of the bar himself
Yes.
is answering questions.
Very
So
good.
they have already discredited that aspect of things.
Here? He was our guest yesterday, and he
Yes.
did say they're having a meeting on Monday
Yes.
where they will discuss
They will-
options.
No, forget
I
about
sent
the
them
options. Are they
memo.
discussing his own issue that
Before
he
the
is...
EFCC.
Yes.
He's been
You
hauled
see,
before the
I've
EFCC.
You see,
sent-
that
I've
is
sent
the
them a
point.
memo
So
already.
this is a perception thing.
I know, but beyond
The
perception,
bar
TK,
itself is already being presented as being corrupt.
But
The
here we-
bench is corrupt. So what are you saying?
when I was saying earlier,
The
on,
judiciary is gone.
You see, the information has it that even the judge who is required now to preside over the whole affair, he has a case in court already.
Exactly.
All right? But our own president, PMB, has his eyes
on
focused
the CJ.
on the CJ, but refusing to see the appointee to look at that one.
Ladi Umar is also
So
facing
please,
EFCC
you see,
charges.
But
this
you
is
see,
where-
and this is where I say we have
And that's where I disagree with Professor Killer, where he's saying that, oh, the problem is not
one man.
one man.
Yeah, okay, that's
No,
it.
please, you are presiding over.
Yes.
We have been told proverbially in Yoruba that it is the leader
Yes.
in a war situation that is first of all confronted with attack all along. He's responsible, he's answerable to the people of Nigeria. If you are advised, can't you also sit down and reflect on the advice, the piece of advice given to you? Why is it that already people try to blame the ghostwriters?
But for
You
the
know,
same.
yes. Now,
make it
we
a-
can blame them as well. But please, for God's sake, didn't Mr. President know that his ghostwriters are competent or not competent? Why do you put people who will plagiarize your speech? We've had that one in the past. What is it that is wrong with the president of Nigeria that you cannot surround yourself with people who can reason, who can analyze, and now you will now come with a speech? When you go through the speech, the structure itself is very problematic. All right? It's very problematic. So it is the leader we must hold responsible this time.
Always.
So,
The buck
you
stops with
cannot
him.
say...
We can hold the leader responsible. I agree with you. I just think the leader is not enough. I think we have a system problem. And to buttress the point that we have a system problem as well is this. There is another beat that is going on, which is that the CJN himself is not looking very good, actually, because when we go to the crux of it, whether they're trying to frame him, maliciously persecuting him, he has questions to answer for that amount of money he has. How much does a judge have?
Yes.
Because when you go and look at it, and now I have a bias. For me, anybody who, by virtue of their role, their job, have been in a place where they can sit with the president of Nigeria in a room that does not require extra space, i.e. public officers, governors, senators, all of them, I always believe that they are guilty until proven innocent. That is my stance towards them.
Okay, you turned the law on his head.
Yeah, that is
for
a killer
you.
law. For me,
But why do you have that bias?
yeah, because in most cases that's always the case. In most cases it's like that. Very few of them can really document the source of their wealth. So we must go carefully on that. The NBA, I was coming back to the bar, and all these good, willing people, just the same way, nobody has advised Buhari the right way. Has this CJ not got one friend to advise him to set himself aside while this thing is going on? He should have resigned before now. Let's be honest with ourselves.
No,
if
you
we
see-
were in a principled society,
Was he given the opportunity to do
you don't need an opportunity.
no,
you need
no,
pen
no,
and
no,
paper.
There were
Prof,
reports
you
that
see
there were reports that he adjourned
Yes.
the meeting of the NJC to avoid having to recuse
But that's a
himself.
terrible thing.
So those were the reports.
But the point is simple.
Yes.
When you have already set off ab initio on the wrong route,
Yes.
you don't have a right. You are stopped. He talked about estoppel earlier on.
Yes.
You can use that same principle. You don't have the right to expect any form of equitable behavior from the other party. That is all I'm saying, and that is why this thing is. You called it a comedy of errors, or prof, because the truth is, just do the right
Everyone
thing at
is
the
wrong.
beginning.
The CJN is
Do
wrong.
the right thing at the
president
beginning,
is wrong,
and
the
this
civil
issue
society-
will not even be there.
Look, the presidency is wrong, the CJN is wrong, and the civil society is wrong.
So do you use a greater corruption to cure a corruption?
Very interesting question. That's the
right.
point. Now, you should never do that. You see, the whole point is this. Democracy is not common sense. the law is not commonsensical. It's based on procedures and process. And the reason why it's based on procedures and process is not because it's common sense. It's because it is not based on trust. Let us assume that you say in times of corruption, you want to take a shortcut and do the right thing. And we trust you because you're a good man. What if tomorrow, a person who is not a good man or who is a madman comes in and tries to do what you've done today? You must not create negative precedents in law and in history. And one thing we must say is this, and this is something Nigerians should be very clear about. Every time in democracy, you try to take a shortcut, the likely destination is dictatorship or anarchy. Never, no matter how complicated, how cumbersome the due process is, it must always be followed. And if you want to change the due process, you don't change it when the case is going. That is why you need visionary leaders.
Changing the goalposts in the middle of the game.
You change it, you come in there. And I want to say this for people to know, so that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to study more. Stop being lazy and reading reviews instead of books.
You see what?
That is what we have. When Tony Blair got into trouble, I must say this.
Yes.
There was a problem with the judicial system. Not after they had a case. They had a meeting and they had a seminar. People came to Cambridge. They sat down to say, how do we review the judicial system to make things quicker?
Yeah, to make things work
because
better.
there are backlogs. It's been done in Italy.
Yes.
Greek had their own time when they did it. It was done in Netherlands. And it was done in your France, which you know very well. How the whole thing, the battle for quick things.
The question we should all address is this. Why is it that it is this, at this critical juncture, this time, that Mr. President prefers now to have the CJN prosecuted? Now, from the perspective of the international community,
3 weeks.
Now, unlike before, the international community now strongly believes that the APC administration has an agenda. The agenda, all right, is to secure election by rigging, quote and unquote scientific rigging. Because by the time the debate has been on, the international community doesn't bother. But now that you now have Mr. President making all efforts tooth and nail, frolicking around the nooks and crannies of the world to get those who are likely to be critically involved in the process in election. Now, they've given us a warning already.
And don't forget.
So this is the issue.
Oh, by the way, it's the warning that some of us gave before then. Let's not give them
exactly.
Yes.
And you know what makes it
was said before then.
What makes it worse? What makes it worse is that the environment is too toxic. You understand? The APC has made the political environment in Nigeria toxic and obnoxious. Why do I say that? 2 weeks ago or so, the chairman of the APC on the rostrum in Benin or somewhere actually said, while supposed to be receiving some new members into the party, and said, come, all you that have sinned, into the APC.
And your sin will be forgiven.
So definitely, if Onnoghen, if they believe he has sinned, or Dasuki, who has been illegally held for all these years, if they go over to the APC tomorrow, they become free men. All will be well. And we have seen that happen. I don't want to call names, but we have seen that happen serially with PDP members, ex-senators, ex-ministers. You see, I don't know how to get this across. I have this solidarity spirit in me. People I have sat down with before on the same side of the table, and we've been to battle. Because don't forget, all my life, until 2015, when I decided to quit the stage altogether, I've been PDP. So all these are people over the years, whether I was in the federal government or I was in the state government, that I was with. That is why I just, try to take it easy. But a lot of them, some are even coming back and testifying against their own members, people they all colluded and committed all kinds of crimes, and they say you become a witness and you are now free, and you are convicting your own brother?
Mr. PDP, Mr. PDP,
that's all I can say. Let me say for Nigeria.
Well, that's your problem because you are PDP. For those of us who do not belong to any party, that tough luck.
Jump around.
No, tough luck to anybody.
We are quite unmoved, Chike.
Exactly. We don't care about your pain for your fellow party men. Here's the situation as citizens that we should be following.
Nasty.
Whoever they catch stealing should be prosecuted. Whether they're catching you
Subject
because
to
you
the
are
rule
not,
of law.
of course, to the prosecuted
Subject
is
to the
no,
rule of
no.
law.
I didn't say condemn.
So
I
you
said
subscribe to
prosecuted.
selective justice.
I
That's
do
what
know.
you're saying.
No, I do know.
Because that is what is going on in Nigeria.
You know what? I'd rather have selective justice or no justice at all.
Okay.
We should start. No.
I disagree with that.
Of course you would.
So
Okay.
selective justice is
Yes.
a disaster.
It is
That
a
is
disaster.
corruption in itself.
Of
You
course
cannot
it is.
fight
Of course.
corruption selectively.
Of course. No, you cannot.
You're not in a cul-de-sac.
No, I'm not a concern. I'm fine. The difference between you and I is because that you believe there's some good people in political arena. I don't. I believe that let us start prosecuting every day. One person today, the other one tomorrow.
I don't mind.
Step by step. That's how you agree with me.
Everybody.
But that's not what they are
Everybody.
doing.
Because
But that's not what they are doing.
that's why we need to build institutions
the
to
problematic
make
with
sure.
his submission is that he too now,
Yes.
the scientificity of the presentation is to the extent that he has assumed
Yes.
that everybody, every politician
It's
is
corrupt.
guilty.
Yeah, you have
Yes.
a bias.
So
Yes,
that one,
a
that
very
one
strong
is
one.
not tenable.
No, he
Very
said it
strong.
already. that they are
very
all
strong.
guilty
Until
until they are
proven
proven
innocent.
innocent. He turned
Yes.
it around, yeah.
That is totally unconstitutional. Prof. Really.
Well, that's why I'm not there.
But now I want to talk to you about the timing. Let's go back to that.
Okay.
What happens now? Because clearly, President Buhari is quite entrenched in his position.
Yes.
He has expressed that he is the judge, jury, and executioner. He's taking over from here on out. They have sworn in
Yes.
the electoral tribunal. What
No,
happens now?
if you asked me, clearly, the legal practitioner or solicitor or barrister or lawyer, any of those things you call us, in me, tells me that we are in very worrying times.
Yes.
We are definitely, regressing into some fascism, and I pray not anarchy at the end of the day, because as we speak today, the Chief Justice of Nigeria has not resigned. So is it that we have two CJs as we speak?
Suspended one.
I don't know what.
make it more dramatic than it
No.
is.
You see, the problem with that suspension is that it cannot be valid because you did not arrive. Yes, the president has those powers to suspend, but it has to
not
come
about it wrong
from the root. It has come from the wrong.
Well, you can
root.
validate
so
it.
it
No.
makes it invalid.
Hey, that is the least of our
Well,
problems.
these are all jurisprudential things, and it is the same court,
The court of
same
law,
judiciary
to
that
your
will determine
question.
this. That is in
It's
anarchy.
under attack.
What they can do is this. They can fast track it, go straight to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court says that this nomination was illegal, they reverse it straight away. So that's possible. The Senate can censor the president.
But
If
who
it-
will preside over the Supreme Court to hear this matter?
to somebody else. But these things are there.
Who? The acting
They are, or two
or
of
the
them.
suspended?
No, exactly. Or both of
the,
them
the
will
suspended
the
will
Supreme Court.
recuse
suspended
themselves.
is suspended. The suspended is suspended.
Okay.
That is either the acting or
The next
somebody else
senior
from the
one.
bar. Yes.
We
You
are
can
limiting
recuse it.
seniority.
Don't forget that when you go to court, you can actually impugn your judge. You can say, I don't have confidence in this judge. If you can make a case, and it's not a sole decision. You see, our problem, corruption is a very bad problem. But the reason why corruption thrives in Nigeria is because of incompetence. It's because the good people are not competent people. They're just well-wishers.
I
And
don't
we
share your
need
view. I
a
don't share your
citizen.
view on that, Prof. I don't share your
We've
view
got to
because
move on to the next political
all right.
topic. Within the past week, the presidential candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Obi EZEKWESILI'S, announced her withdrawal from the presidential race. Dr. EZEKWESILI'S said she would rather devote her time to helping to build a coalition to defeat the All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party in the forthcoming elections. But the Independent National Electoral Commission rejected her withdrawal outright, saying the deadline has passed for withdrawals and substitutions for the elections. INEC says the Electoral Act 2010, as amended, states that a candidate can only withdraw from the election 45 days to the poll. EZEKWESILI'S withdrawal has also forced her party, Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, to denounce her and endorse President Muhammadu Buhari for a second term in office. Now, I don't agree that they were forced to denounce her. I think it got quite nasty and personal with her erstwhile vice presidential running mate saying she's trying to lobby for a ministerial position, all these accusations.
But she was a minister how many years ago?
Yes, that she wants to be Minister for Finance, which is why she's stepping down. What is your view on the latest situation, her belated withdrawal? I mean, the timing at the 11th hour withdrawing from a presidential race.
The truth is that Obi need not have gone into all this at all. Obi has to make up her mind what it is she wants to do. Like you rightly said, she had been Minister of Solid Minerals and she had been Minister of Education, all in a PDP government, as I said earlier on. And of course, at those times, I know she was one of the shining stars of the ministers. Then she went, she had a stint in the World Bank, and she came back. And she decided to become an activist. She started with Bring Back Our Girls, then Red Card. I guess she's just a little bit restless, you know, and she has to keep doing something. Then she goes back into politics, and Obi says she wants to be president of Nigeria. Now, before then, she goes, there was some pact or something that they were supposed to come together. She was the referee. They chose a candidate. Shortly after that, Obi announces her candidature. Now, not within the 45-day rule, Obi withdraws. So? You see, I mean, Twitter, you name it, WhatsApp, everything was crazy with the kind of... In fact, they were actually hurling insults at her.
They really were.
Yes, and she has not done herself any favors.
I think they're just silly. You know? They're silly. Look, you have this very pedestrian way of interpreting the whole thing. It seems clear and commonsensical as a dangerous thing. I disagree with you. There's nothing wrong with her trying to run for president. It's a legitimate thing. Yes. There's nothing wrong with her pulling out if she thinks there's something else to do. Her statements were very clear. I am pulling out to go and build a coalition that will defeat the present two major parties.
She didn't do that from the beginning.
Coalition
in 3 weeks.
Anybody.
Please, look, the earlier you like to be theoretical.
I'm not theoretical.
Prof, please. Waiting on this. I don't want to hear
No, you must hear it. You must hear it. Look, the earlier the better, but it's never too late. And INEC has no business.
Apparently, it is too late. According to INEC, the electoral umpire has said she cannot withdraw.
What if she were dead? Would they go and wake up and say it was different?
Then that's different.
Look, she does not need. She does not need.
We are regulated by
the
laws.
electoral umpire, and they create the guidelines, the framework.
They've done,
through which elections are conducted. They have said it is too late.
No, they won't force her to contest, but she has voided all those votes. That is the result.
That's
what I'm saying. The supposed votes of that party will not be there.
But that's all right. Look, this is the point. INEC's position is to count the votes. Make sure people vote and count them. The position of a politician and a political party is to tell people where to put their thumbs. So if she's going to be and a coalition are strong enough a day before election to say, I have decided that, that I'm going to the extreme here, a day before election to say, no, wait, and I'll give you a theoretical...
have to be set.
It's a spirit of dictatorship that is getting into it. That is a sign of the time. It's being taken. It wouldn't let me talk.
Okay, the APC is affecting me.
Yes.
They are afflicting me. Okay, that's fine.
If she has the capacity and the channels of communication to tell her supporters, her voters, even a day before election, that we have decided after last night's meeting that you should not put your thumb on the slot for a party, but for another party, so be it. And if they lose some...
create a coalition, don't the parties have to come together? Don't they have to decide the presidential candidate, the running mate? How can you do that?
You see, we're living in interesting times. Now, this is a time, a political lesson, a very quick one. A coalition is an agreement of people to say, this is the way to go to. It doesn't have to be a party. The electoral process in which people vote can be twofold. The parties can come together to form a union that will have a name. They can call it a coalition of said party. That cannot be done because it's too late to register one. But what can be done is a coalition that is represented by one force. So all the parties can come together and say, we all agree to vote for this party. That is doable. You don't need...
theory, but in practice,
I'll tell you something. We say in theory. I'm not going to make any names. But in this country where we live, votes has been shifted by SMS a day before, where a leading politician in the Nigerian state sent messages to his followers that do not vote our presidential candidate, vote another one.
That is fine.
And I'll tell you what that result happened. No, it is fine. You like it the cultic way. She's coming to do it openly and you say there's something wrong. She is going to, as time move on, indicate who to vote for. The only problem I have with our process is this disarray, this confusion with our party. There's nothing wrong with her 30 days to election saying, I've decided to step down. And she's not the first person to do it in history. In 2011, Party Tomi stepped down and endorsed, what's the man from Kanu's name? The principal, the guy who became the later Minister for Education.
Let's look at it differently. We have many conflicting positions here. the position of the INEC
Yes.
is clear. INEC will proceed, regardless of the position of Obi, to print
The ballot paper.
the ballot papers
yes.
with
As
ACPN.
everything there.
And
Very good.
So
photograph with
the
them.
withdrawal
Yes.
doesn't make sense for INEC, meaning that on the day of voting,
that slot will be there.
will be there. First position.
And I agree with you.
Now, the second way of looking at it is Obi, who is supposed to be the contestant, says she's no longer there.
Yes.
And she has actually withdrawn.
Yes.
Good. Now, her position now, that's the extent to which I will agree with you.
Yes.
Which is that she's going to build a coalition,
Yes.
all right, of new forces,
Yes.
all right, against the APC.
The two main
And
forces.
The two- now,
Yeah,
i-
that's
i-
against both parties.
Yes.
yes.
Major parties.
So in this case,
You and your friends, Chike.
she can at the last minute tell her followers
Yes.
if she will still have by the time she's going to make the pronouncement.
Exactly.
Now, to say, let us vote along this direction.
Yes.
That is another position.
Yes.
The only thing now is that the voter
Yes.
who will be going to vote
Yes.
now can vote because her picture has her every particular has been put there.
Yes.
You
Can
know,
they
her
can vote for
particulars,
her?
they can vote for her there.
Yes.
Now, that will still be counted.
Yes.
But the other third position
Yes.
is the party's position.
Yes.
All right.
That's a mess.
Which now says, look, we are now going along the
APC
APC
side. Yes.
side, which Obi
Is against.
is against.
Yes.
So now, the voters
Yes.
are now divided. Some are likely to vote.
No, they're not
for-
that many voters anyway for her. So,
when I talked about featherweight, heavyweight,
Yes,
the other
2
time,
weeks ago or so.
To box
you
together.
are not, yes, precisely. So,
No, I don't think there's any argument with her withdrawing from the race, especially because she said there was sort of a divergence in the vision between herself and the party.
Oh, she said that later.
Yes, there was some
Odd
allusion.
bedfellows.
Yes.
They should never have been
Yes.
together.
they're all
Yeah.
So
bedfellows in politics.
she withdrew from the race. But this idea of forming coalition, is there actually, and what has become of the third force?
Very
Can
good.
we look at the third force?
Let me tell you the truth.
I know
As
you
I see
always
it
like
quickly,
to.
and I'll cede the floor to you. I feel they missed that golden opportunity. When they started talking about it, now if they were serious, and if it's not the Nigerian in us, I don't know, everybody wants to be everything.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
We're so traders
nobody's
by
ready
nature.
to step down their ambition for
Yeah.
the next and build anything. Everybody wants everything to be built around them. I think it's just a problem. The egos are too big.
Now, I am going to speak as one of the theorists of the third force. You are right. The problem, the third force was a viable thing. The problem, you're right, we said is ego coming out. But
Yes.
beyond that, ego is never in politics. Let us not deceive ourselves. All the people running for office have ego.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of ego for you to say, out of 180 million people, I want to
me,
be
I'm
the
the
thing.
best.
No. and we all know that they're rarely the best. There are very few people in politics who are actually sound intellectual or inventors or people of great ideas.
You don't have any respect
No,
for
it's
politicians.
not, I do. It's just history. It's just history.
Nigerian
point is-
politicians.
No, all over the world. All over the world. You know what they say history is the show is for people who couldn't make it in showbiz, the ugly people. That's what they go and do. Now, let's put it this way. The problem with the third force is that personality trumps ideas. The way to have gone about it is because in Nigeria, too many things are personal. We're a nation of orphans. This idea that people mistrain and call them daddy and mommy, and we look for, it's a cultural flaw in us. We personalize everything, and everything becomes a burden of an individual rather than ideas and processes. The idea of a candidate in reality should be that a candidate should be somebody that embodies, that represents an idea and a consensus. And that person goes not because he or she is the best in the world, because in that historical moment is the person best suited to represent those ideas and consensus. Or maybe the only one that has time, because I know some people who will not leave their classroom or their engineering job to go and be run about.
Is that what caused the failure of the third force?
I think what happened is that the third force ran too quickly into partisan politics, and it was divided straight away. What should have happened is the way it was built was to continue to, on one side, mobilize ideas, and the other side, mobilize people. And I use mobilize because it's a verb I don't like, but it's a verb Nigerians don't understand. To put together ideas and to put together people to say this is where we're going to go to, and look for a different way of doing things. But people get carried away. You see, it's one of the problems I have in Nigeria. We have the situation in our country where the state is weak in its action, but the people take it too serious. This idea of people, the same thing now with INEC in. INEC's position is irrelevant in Obi's withdrawal. It doesn't care. Who matters what they say, they accept it or not? We don't know how to discard the power of the state and authority when they have no real effect in life. I have people who set up an association of friends, and the first thing they want to register in CAC. And I keep telling them, you don't need to. Who cares?
I don't think the point is about INEC. I think the point is about Dr. EZEKWESILI'S plan to form a coalition. I think that is the sticking point, the fact that it's not practicable at this point.
She needs to cease.
You see,
she
the
needs
two of them are correct.
Capacity and the channel of communication. This is a time of technology.
Or does she have those two C's?
Well, you're going to test her in 30 days' time. We'll see history with Georgia State.
Look,
and it is wrong for everybody to say this
is,
idea of saying that, oh, she can't do it. We should just wait. Now, this is the difference between me and others.
Nobody's saying she can't do it. Well,
No, you all think she can do it.
No,
You might not be saying it. Inside your mind,
I told you she was one of the leading lights of the PDP. I just said it here. I don't doubt Obi's capacity.
I am reading
what
your
I'm
mind.
talking about is her inability to cope
Yes.
with the process. How do you withdraw when it's beyond the time when you should withdraw?
But I'm
putting the whole
telling
process
you,
in
telling you, all she
You should have
needs-
known what you wanted to do if you were going to go the whole hog or not ab initio.
She has a right to change her mind based on what has happened. Will it have been better
And
to have
thereby
foresight?
infringe the election regulations?
There is nothing to infringe.
There is. You can only withdraw 45 days to the elections. And she has done that outside that town.
45 days to election.
Yes,
you can
and withdrawal. That is why they are insisting that she will still be on the ballot.
Oh, yeah,
But
okay, I see what you mean. Technically,
I
yes,
think
you're right.
Prof should come in and wade in, and because he has something to say to both of
You
us.
are correct. I only refer you to what I think Peter Nahoro, how
Yes.
to be a Nigerian.
Yes.
Go and read it. You will now see that your arguments are valid.
Yeah.
Yours are equally valid. The critical point here is that Nigerian people, we are used to acquiescing,
Yeah.
to illegalities. The bitter truth is that the Electoral Act says you have the right to withdraw at any time. But it must not be less than 45 days to the time.
Yes.
That's the first point there.
That's right.
Now, if a candidate dies, there's a provision there. If it falls within the time limit given also, the political party has the right
To replace. Force majeure.
So what we are now addressing is the critical issue of timing, 45 days.
Yeah.
That, look, if Obi is determined enough, he should have decided the time to withdraw.
Yes.
If you want to form a new coalition force, nothing is wrong with it. Nobody says you should not
very
go.
good. Yeah.
But the main problem now is the implication of the withdrawal.
Yes.
At a time, you do no longer have the legality of mind to do so.
That's right. You're out
So-
of time.
so
As we
that
say
is-
in law,
that
you're
is the
out
issue.
of time for
It's
that
not that.
withdrawal.
You're trying to sweep that under the carpet. And
I'm not sweeping it. Look, what happens is this. INEC says, when INEC says you can withdraw, what they mean is that on the day of election, the ballot paper will still have your slot.
Yeah.
So if she has the capacity and the channels of communication to tell people that instead of voting that slot, vote another slot,
Yes.
then all is fine.
That's fine.
Well, we await
That's
her
my
World
position.
Conference
That's fine.
We are
in the
doing
coming
that.
week. She's giving a world
Well,
press
that's what I'm
conference, so
saying.
we await that.
That's fine.
It's time now for a short break on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing the reemergence of Donald Duke as the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still in Nigeria, the appeal court this past Thursday set aside the ruling of a federal high court which nullified the nomination of Donald Duke as a presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party. The panel held that the application is illegal and unconstitutional and insisted that the position of Professor Jerry Ghana, who was runner-up but elevated by the lower court, contravenes the Electoral Act stipulation for the validity of a candidate in any election. Professor Ghana, however, rejected Thursday's appeal court judgment, describing it as erroneous, contradictory, and a miscarriage of justice. Mr. Duke, however, has extended an olive branch and requested Professor Ghana to join and work with him for the party's victory at the polls. Over to you, gentlemen. Now, for me, the main issue with this, apart from the loss of time and momentum at this critical phase, is this issue of zoning, which continues to be a bête noire in Donald Duke's political career. Do we jettison zoning entirely and just go for the merits?
Well, quickly, I just think, again, Donald is my friend, and we're all PDP all these years. Again, one of the most outstanding governors, a man of great ideas. Well, zoning, that has been the elephant in the room for a long time in Nigeria, because somehow or the other, that seems to be the only thing that can help us, even within the states, keep a balance. But it's not law. It's certainly not law. Now, Ghana is of the opinion that you can't have a chairman of my party, and the presidential party and the presidential candidate from the South.
The old SDP.
And exactly. And then they took it to the court. And the court upheld that, the lower court, the high court.
Yes.
Now it goes to the Court of Appeal, right? And the Court of Appeal now really does justice to the thing and says, look, zoning, no laws have been infringed. And, of course, upheld Donald's candidature. Of course, what that has done is that it has put that party miles behind. This is a party that was supposed to be a third, in the hierarchy of parties. Not the third first, but the third, strongest party. And they were supposed to have been built and gained some traction.
Chike, just
and whether we like it or not. Yes.
Federal character is actually enshrined in the Constitution.
In the Constitution, yes. But this is zoning. This is not federal character. They are very different things.
They're different, but it's derived from that whole everybody must be represented.
Yes, fine. That's federal character.
Where should we address it? At the grassroots level, at the local level, or
Personally, Tundu, I think federal character should be reflected everywhere in Nigeria, grassroots to the topmost level of any appointment or board. Otherwise, even with that enshrined in the Constitution, you see how skewed the appointments are in the present APC regime, how it is just all to one side.
And some people
are blowing, exactly, because, like you rightly said, it is enshrined in the Constitution.
I'm asking the politician in you, why didn't your party take Buhari to court when you felt that? Instead of shouting on TV, why didn't you take him to court when you felt the appointment were violating the federal character?
Why, you should ask them.
Yes,
you should ask
I
them.
imagine that they do have local standards to take the president.
Yes. So all I'm saying is this. Strictly speaking, Donald has done nothing wrong. The law has been upheld for him to be the standard bearer of the party, but I know that party has lost a lot of traction in all of this that they have been through.
Look, you see, let me associate myself with Chike here that you have the right and you should shout on television when you have a very strong view to send across. There's nothing wrong with that one. So if you are now saying one is shouting all along, no, I'm taking delivering from that stuff. There are two critical issues in this matter. I had the opportunity of listening to Donald Duke during an interview either with Rice or another television. I wouldn't know the one exactly. He pointed to the fact that what the rule, what the regulation, what the constitutional provision says, the party regulation says is that the chairmanship of the party and the presidency, the president
Candidate.
all right, must not come from the same area. Donald Duke came up with a very powerful very logical argument to say, look, he is currently a candidate. He is not yet the president. He's only striving, making strenuous efforts to become the president. Meaning now that the interpretation of the law itself, and I wouldn't be surprised if the appeal court upheld his own position of the argument. That look, what Jerry Garner is talking about is at best hypothetical.
Yes.
All right? Chairmanship and the president do not be confused in terms of meaning. And if now he's offering an olive hands to Jerry Garner to see reason, I think he's quite right. The second point of observation is that whether you want to insist on the fact that zoning is a resultant of federal character principle or not, the issue is that, as I've said, I'm not a lawyer, but what I know is this. There is a principle of dole in international law, which says that, look, if you are going to be induced into error, if you have been induced into error, by the time you are doing an agreement, signing an agreement, you can go back and withdraw.
Yes.
All right? So the issue now is that we can see with our naked eyes. We don't need any microscopic equipment, binoculars to see that. Who is respecting federal character principle in this administration of Buhari? Now, people who have been convicted in court, we tell him, we remind him, probably he doesn't know. Now he still insists on that. Now, why is he accused of nepotism? What's the meaning of nepotism?
Because people don't know child.
Is that not an infringement, a direct,
of the federal character?
Yes, precisely, yes. Of the same principle.
It is.
So now, if you are condoning on the one hand, when you do an agreement, a multilateral agreement, done by Professor Killer, the former commissioner and myself, now Professor Killer consciously infringes on the provisions. He doesn't respect it. Why must you expect me to respect the same argument? So please, look, we need to sit down. If we are whipping, you must also see clearly at the same time.
You must be able to see. Look, on this thing, I think one thing. The theorist of the most articulate theorist of zoning in Nigeria is a chap called Onnoghen Suspension, who's an Oxford lecturer, freelance lecturer, and he made a cogent point, which I think is flawed. You see, my thinking is that zoning is one of those things made of good intention. But as we all know, the road to hell is littered with a lot of good intention. I think it's a lazy shortcut that Nigerians have taken to the issue of our coexistence.
That's right.
We need to go back to look at it and put forward fairness and merit. I would like a country where the ugly word, detribalized, is cancelled. We don't need to be tribalized.
That's right.
We just need to be fair and follow the rule of law, and you can come wherever you want. And
Absolutely.
the best will always
You
aspire.
cannot be more correct.
Absolutely.
So I go back to my issue.
All this
competence.
current
But
system breeds is mediocrity.
I agree.
Absolutely.
But that is utopia he's
It
talking
is not.
about.
It is
You know
not.
why I say so?
Yes.
This country is so fractured.
Yes.
This country has been built on so much lies and deceit.
Yes.
That this country cannot be said
Yes.
to be a country in itself.
It is a country,
Or
that's
a
not a
nation.
nation. It is
If
not
you
a
understand
nation.
what I mean.
And that's why
that's
I
why
cringe
these
when you call
things
it a
you are
nation.
saying are things that are embedded in the foundations.
We just need to
of
go
the
back to the
illegalities
We
and
just
the
need-
wickedness
I
that
agree
are
with you.
inherent
Unfortunately,
in the
we've
fabric
got
of
around.
this society.
Competence
That is
is
why
what
we
we need.
cannot go forward like this.
We have to leave it here for now. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Tundra Abiola. From my team and I here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned.